I'm a failure. The crowd.
Welcome, Dan.
I feel so at home with all of the other failures in the room.
Admit this is our first step in the wrong place.
Yeah. I've been working on different startups here for probably 6 or so years now, and had tons and tons of failures, and actually no great, huge successes. So this isn't any kind of a success story, but I keep getting closer and closer. I don't have anything real official for you guys. If you guys have questions along the way, feel free to just raise your hand, throw out a question. This is just kind of real chill. But anyhow, so I never really realized I was an entrepreneur. I grew up in Michigan, the Detroit metro area. My dad's about the furthest thing from an entrepreneur you can ever imagine. And so no one really ever taught me anything about business or anything like that. And so I went to college, and he was like, "Oh, what are you gonna major in?" Religion sounds pretty cool, so I got a major in religion, and that's what really helps me in my business ventures. Or not.
We all have to answer to a higher power.
Yeah, you guys.
That hope is not a business strategy.
But
Faith,
Dark hole.
if faith is my business strategy, it has failed me about 4 times now. Don't go that route. But I got out of college and really realized I don't want to do this. And so I started kind of just doing business and just started figuring stuff out, and I started my own design company. And I'll talk about that in just a second. But my very first tech startup, I started getting into tech and I was a graphic designer and then did web design and then did some web development on the front end, and then I could build websites. And so when I was in college, in high school, I did MMA and martial arts and jiu-jitsu and all this stuff. And so this whole UFC thing was just booming, it was just starting to peak 5 or 6 years ago. So I had this genius idea. Everybody was doing all these crazy grunge shirts and everything. And so this idea popped into my head one day. It was either that or I ate something bad the night before. I'm not sure which one. But it was to take these the bathroom figures that you see on the signs when you go into the bathroom and make them do MMA moves, right? And so we called it My Favorite Move. And it wasn't focused on the Crazy Cool brand. It was just focused on what's your favorite move, And so we had 5 different shirts that had the different moves on them. And I was really, really green at this point as far as the startup space and tech and stuff like that. And so I made just about every mistake in the book. In fact, I'm not actually sure I made any good moves in this business. I'm actually not joking. But I think probably the biggest mistake I made with this company is I stopped. And I got really discouraged. And it could have been a great company, and I really think it would have been a great company, and we sold product. So when you start off with a startup, you have these big hopes and dreams, as you should, right? I heard a great quote that said, in the end, you only succeed because you were stupid enough to believe that you really would. And we're all dreamers, we all have to be optimistic, and we all have to be really kind of stupid at times to think that we can actually pull this thing off. But that's also what sets us apart from everybody else, right? Is that we don't sit around and do the average job and quit, right? We figure it out and we keep going, and we dream and we believe. But one of the problems I made is that I didn't see myself as a small business. I saw myself as a really huge business. Because do you ever sit around dreaming and think about your business and think, we could sell 5 pieces of product? I mean, who does that, right? But you sit around and you automatically, as an entrepreneur, if you don't do this, you have problems and you shouldn't be an entrepreneur. But automatically you're thinking about the millions of shirts you can sell and the billions of dollars you can make. And that works for you and against you, right? You need that dream to keep pushing forward. But if you jump beyond where you are right now, you're going to make some huge mistakes. And so I like to think of it in terms of anything that grows. You, right? I've got a 22-month-old son, and I don't treat him like he's 10 years old, because he's not 10 years old. I treat him like he's 22 months old. Eventually, he's going to be 10 years old. Eventually, he's going to be 20 years old. But I thought of this company as being really huge, so I didn't just want to go out and just go to the local t-shirt shop here and get 10 shirts made to find out if anybody wanted them. stupid, right? At least at that time it was stupid. So what I did instead, because I could get those shirts for like $14 a piece if I just ordered a real small quantity, but I had to make millions on this, right? And so what I did was I ordered 2,000 shirts because I could get those 2,000 shirts down to like $3.50 per shirt, right? So I'm spending $7 grand, but it's $3.50 per shirt. And as I so slyly told my wife, we could easily sell them for at least $10. And so all we gotta do is get rid of 2,000 of those shirts, right? And so we ordered 2,000 shirts. And we had to have them in 2 different colors. So we had some brown and some black because you can't just have one color because what kind of horrible company is that? And we couldn't just have 1 or 2 moves because we want to give people options. So we had 5 moves. And so you have this inventory mess, right? And what sizes do you order? I really don't know. We closed our eyes and we just sort of picked and figured out what we thought we wanted, right? And but here's the thing, right? we saw our company as being way bigger than we were, and so now I really encourage companies, think of yourself as being small. Like you're just really you're an infant, and you need to see yourself as being an infant. If I were to go back and do this whole thing over again, here's what I do. I would get 10 to 20 shirts, and I would just get them in the most popular sizes that I thought would be, medium, large, extra large, right? And I would get 1 color, maybe 1 or 2 moves, and I'd lose money on the shirts. But I don't care if I have to buy the shirts at $25 and sell them for $15. Instead of losing $7,000, I'd be losing like $30, right? But I'd validate the idea. And then if the idea worked, then I could move on and sell more shirts, right? But we made just tons of other mistakes with this whole thing. I think one of the big things is I'm an okay designer, but I'm not a great designer. And so I did most of the design for this stuff. And the initial stuff that I did, as I look back on it, it was like, it kind of sucks a little bit. And I had the money to pay a really great designer to do it. And so I really try to focus now on what I really, really do well, and then I pay other people to do what they really do well. But then again, like really early on, if you're just doing a crazy MVP and you just need to get something to market, maybe it doesn't matter, maybe you do it yourself. But if you've got the money, I'm a big fan of pay somebody that does really great work to do what they do well. So I only lost about $10,000 with that whole company. But I consider that $10,000 worth of education that I could have spent at a university.
So I want to boost your ego here just a little bit because we're talking about failure, but congratulations on the legitimately selling product.
Thank you. And actually, we sold like 280 shirts, right?
So 10% of your image.
We did. And the problem is that I thought we would sell, of course, like in a month, like we were going to sell 2,000 shirts, like that's a piece of cake, right? And so I got so discouraged that we only sold, a couple shirts a day or whatever it was. And so I got so down. And in my mind, the whole world, like all my friends, all my family were staring at me, watching me, and pointing fingers like, you're not selling shirts, you're not selling shirts. Only to find out after like the whole thing went under, and they really thought it was pretty cool. They thought I was like super bold for having gone out and done this thing. And as I look back on it now, that could have been a really, really great business that I probably could have slowly built and sold to a legitimate t-shirt manufacturer because they wanted the brand, right?
If you started off making 100 shirts.
Yeah,
Maybe we have to go back and get more.
Could have started off really small and just figured it out. And I really do think it could have been a great business. So my biggest failure on that was quitting and not following through with it, right? And that's always a trick with running your companies, is when you throw in the towel and when you keep going. And I think, if anything, you err to the side of keep going as long as it's not like running you into the ground financially. Just keep at it. And that's one of the things as being an entrepreneur is that you have to have that grit and you got to be bold and just keep moving forward. So I started this design company, and this is actually one of my better successes, and I'll tell you why I think that is. There was no pressure on me to make this a big company. There was only the pressure just to do great work. And so I wasn't making my full-time living doing this thing, and I love doing design. I love working with user interface and stuff like that. And so I think sometimes as an entrepreneur you put so much pressure on yourself to have to succeed and to have to be big and huge that you actually can't see the forest for the trees, right? And so that's, I think, another big mistake that I made with my favorite move. I was so consumed with my passion and drive for succeeding, which meant that I was so averse and afraid of failing that I couldn't make the right business decisions, right? So when you do business, most of the time you have to go out and you have to make logical business decisions that are not influenced by emotion, right? You just have to look at the situation, and there's three choices, and you've got to make the proper business choice, right? And you get too much emotion involved, and you're going to make the wrong choice. I had all my emotion tied up in that thing. It has to work, I have to look awesome and cool, I have to make it big, so I'll buy 2,000 shirts, right? Logically, coming in, it would have said, you know what, 2,000 shirts, that's stupid, we're going to do 10, right? But my emotions overtook me because I was so emotionally invested in the company. But when I consult with companies, I have zero emotion tied into that company. And so for me to take a look at their company and say, oh, it's simple, just do this. Whereas the entrepreneur or the business owner is looking at that saying, but I don't think we can, because they're so emotionally tied up in it. And so now I really try to step back and look at my companies objectively, and I try as best I can, right? But it's almost impossible to do, to disconnect my emotions and say, you know what, if I were consulting for this company, what would I tell them? So we started this company slowly, and we built it up to where I had multiple designers working for me, and we actually, about a year and a half ago, I had so much work coming in that I decided to start turning it down because I was working on my latest startup, and I didn't want to have this take it over. And so I'm actually not doing any work with this right now. But I just bring this up because I think the reason it was so successful was because I didn't put as much pressure on me to make it big. My passion was in this thing, and it had nothing to do with making millions of dollars or anything like that. It was just, I loved it. I loved helping people come up with super creative solutions and designing their products, right? So I'm a big fan of do stuff that you're passionate about. It's not that you can't do a business that you're not passionate about. It's just that it's going to make it a lot harder, because every business sucks, and every business you get in, like there's the honeymoon period where it's super awesome, and of course you're going to be the next Facebook, and then there's the rest of it. And you've got to be able to make it through those hard times, and that's where your passion and drive push you through. Like right now, I'll talk about our startup right now, and we've been in development for months and months and months right now, and it sucks. We're working full-time jobs, we're putting in tons of hours on this thing, and it's not that sexy right now. It's really not that sexy.
But it's pretty sexy.
No, I'm talking about the product, not me.
Oh.
So,
I see what you did there. That's it.
after my favorite move went under, and I drank myself into oblivion and cried, and didn't come out of my house for days, I really did get really down about that. I felt like the world's biggest failure, and I felt like my wife thought I was a huge failure and was, disappointed in me, and people were just, I felt like I walked through the streets and everybody looked at me like, but seriously, it was my first really big failure. I lost $10,000, which sucked, right? And it was all my money. I didn't have any investors. And so after I recovered from that for a while, 3 days later, I thought of another idea. Then I was happy again, and I was going to make billions of dollars. And,
Don't forget about that $10.
Right, yeah. And I forgot about the 10,000. My wife didn't, but I did. So I started this company called Run For It, and I compete in a lot of triathlons, and it's just always kind of a lot of endurance sports. And so Run For It was this really cool idea where it was a mobile running app, and this was 3-4 years ago, so the mobile running apps weren't actually quite as popular as they are today. But they were kind of starting to make their move. But basically what it was you could sign up for the app, and then you could choose your challenges that you wanted to run for. So let's just say you had like a Chick-fil-A 10-mile challenge, and if you ran 10 miles within a week, you got a free Chick-fil-A sandwich. Or it was like the Brooks Shoes challenge, so you had to run 100 miles in a month, and you got 30% off any pair of Brooks shoes, right? But then you had to hook up your Facebook or Twitter account. So every time you started the run, it would say, Nick just started the run for the Chick-fil-A challenge, 3.6 miles to go until he gets his free Chick-fil-A sandwich. So he's advertising out to all of his friends, I want a Chick-fil-A sandwich. Chick-fil-A pays me on a cost per acquisition basis for Nick getting his coupon, right, from advertising marketing. So it was kind of a win-win for everybody. You run to get healthy, you get all these cool rewards, the companies get promotion, I get paid. It's a good deal. And so I think some of the the big mistakes I made there is I built a bad team. And I think this is one of the hardest things to do in a startup, is to build a really quality, solid team. And we don't have a city yet that is like super crazy strong with all these really experienced entrepreneurs who have had all these successful exits. It's not like we're in Silicon Valley. And so you have to be really careful who you pick to be on your team. I think you pick somebody to be on your team like you pick a significant other, right? You don't just randomly run on the street and just grab somebody, right? You want to get to know somebody as somebody you feel like you can live with, somebody, whatever, right? But there are a lot of things that go into making a great entrepreneur, and it's not just skills. Because you can go find the best developer in the world, and he might be the worst person to have as a co-founder for your startup, right? Because they have to be able to assume risk. There's a certain type of person that it takes to be an entrepreneur. Someone that's not wired that way, when the going gets tough and both of you have $20,000 sunk into the game and it's not going well, you've been in development for 8 months and you can't seal the big contracts, they're going to say, you know what, I'm done, man. And you're left high and dry with everything. But you find somebody who's wired as an entrepreneur and has that grit, and at those 8 months, you're all saying this sucks, but you're all saying, well, we're going to freaking make this thing happen, right? And so I brought people onto the team that they were good friends of mine, and they were super talented at what they did. Neither one of them had any business being an entrepreneur and doing a startup. They just weren't wired that way, right? They were wired to do other things. And so when I brought them on board, they were really kind of gung-ho, and they frizzled out pretty fast, and they just couldn't really take the pressure of running a startup. But we had kind of a chicken and an egg problem with Run For It, in that corporations didn't want to work with us until we had users. Users weren't benefited from the product until we had corporate on board. And nonprofits, well, they all want money. So some of them wanted to be on board, but like the big ones didn't want to until we had users or brands, right? And so it was this big chicken and an egg problem that at the end of the day we couldn't solve. So we began developing the whole product and getting it out there, and then we basically just ran out of money and couldn't solve the problem. Somebody sent me an email 4 months later after we closed down for a company called Charity Meals, and it's the same exact idea. They were working on it at the same time as we were, and the way they solved the problem, they raised $4 million in capital, but they took $1 million of that and they used it to just pay you out to run your miles to your charity. So every mile you ran, you earned 5 cents for your favorite charity. And then what they're going to do down the road is they're going to start bringing in brands once they have users. So kudos to them. They built the right team. They figured out how to solve the chicken and egg problem. And my big problem was I didn't build the right team, right? And so that's super, super key. Which brings me to my latest venture that's still going on, but we've still made lots of mistakes with Story. And I hope to keep making mistakes, right? Because I'm not above making mistakes. And I guess where I'm at today is like, I'm totally not afraid to fail with Story. I don't want to fail, and I avoid it at all costs, but I'm not really that worried if we end up having to fail, right? Because we'll get up and we'll do the next one. We'll have some good scotch and run, right? But after making the mistake of building the wrong team, you want to know what mistake I made with Story? Built the wrong team. Now I've got Justin, and most of you guys know Justin. Justin's a killer, right? Like Justin and I, we fit super well together. He's an entrepreneur at his core, and we fit super well together. But initially, there was a crew of 4 of us that were co-founders on it, and we ended up having to get rid of 2 of the other guys. Once again, really talented guys. One of the mistakes we made with one of them is he just didn't have the time. And you got to find people that have the time to put into your startup, because guaranteed, it doesn't matter how talented they are, when they come to you and they say, oh man, I'm super talented, I'd love to, blah, 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 blah. I mean, I've only got like 3-4 hours a week right now, like I'm sure that'll free up at some point, but whatever. It's not that cool when you're going to be putting in 20 to 30 to 40 to 80 hours a week, and they shoot out an email once a week, right? You're going to be pretty pissed. And so they got to be able to pull their own weight. But I'm looking at this like I thought I actually built a really good team. I thought we had the right people. And in hindsight 2020, I realized, one of the guys just wasn't wired to be an entrepreneur. The other guy just didn't have the time. And so we had to make the call, and we had to get rid of him. And it ended up being a really good break. But how do you make that same mistake twice, right? You're an idiot, and that's all there is to it. But you do just get blindsided sometimes with making mistakes like that. And sometimes you just don't know, but I think the big thing here was we just fixed it fast and we just dealt with it. But, and as much as you think you might overbuild the product, we overbuilt the product. And we could have, Justin and I, about 8 weeks ago, we got together and we hacked away at Story. I mean, we had all these really cool features that we wanted in there, and we really had to look at it and say, we're going to launch something that we don't even think is cool. But we need to launch something. What's the minimum viable product that gets out there that we can launch that actually does something so we can start getting people to use it? And the people that we've kicked it out to, we've got like 10 or 12 people that are in our alpha testing right now. They're not even really using it that much because they think it sucks, right? But that's fine. We just need to know, like, what do they feel about these certain things in here? And then we're using it. We're learning about the product. And the product is shifting and changing from our vision, from where it was initially. And that's what's really good. So we've made lots of failures with Story, but here's the difference. We've rebounded from those failures so quickly, and I don't think I'll make those mistakes on my next startup, but it didn't really matter for this startup because after making them once, we made them twice, but we fixed them really fast. And I think that's the big difference, is that as an entrepreneur, it's not like you make a failure once and, oh great, I learned from that, I'm done, right? It's like learning to walk. You know, like when my son learned to walk, he fell and then stood up and fell and then stood up. And I never walked over to him and said, son, you fell once, you should learn from that. I just let him keep falling and keep falling and keep falling, but the kid runs like a champ now, right? And in my perspective, one of the things that sets apart great entrepreneurs from everybody else who never makes it is great entrepreneurs just keep going in the face of adversity. And, you know, I've had lots of failures, I've lost thousands of dollars, and that's cool, that's fine, but I'm not quitting. And if I don't hit my first big startup till I'm 40, then I'll be 40, right? But instead of working a corporate job at 45, I'll be retired. But you see a lot of people that go out and they give it a shot one time. They get so passionate about this idea that falls under, and they say, oh, I guess I'm just done. I can never be an entrepreneur. But then you see these guys that they're on their 5th, 6th, 7th failed startup, but their 8th one, they make $200 million, right? Does it really matter when you make your big exit? It doesn't. But most people, I think, just quit really early. So anyhow, those are my big failure stories, and just kind of what I've learned as an entrepreneur. And hopefully it's helped you guys. If nothing else, you can go home and snicker and laugh at how stupid I am. Or you can feel comforted knowing that there's other people that are still pretty neat.
What is Story?
So Story, initially the Story was a location-based social media company that allowed people to record and share their best memories or the app. So basically we wanted people to be able to open up the app and just find out what happened here, right? What happened in this building, because there are all these memories that have been left everywhere. You know, we leave memories every day at locations. And so that's what we started building out. And then, so it's called an elastic network in the sense that the connection is not, you know, personally, I know Jeff knows me, but it's elastically, it could be anyone around me, right? That connection can happen socially. The problem with an elastic network is that when you're the only person in, it's not very cool, right? When you open up the app and nothing's happening around you, it's not very cool. So as we've begun developing the app more, it's shifted and changed. And so right now, what the app looks like is you can open up the app and then you can still drop those memories all over the place, but you throw all those memories into chapters. And that's kind of like what's unique about Story, is that you can go into my Story account right now and you can see all these chapters from my life. So I've got a chapter for my son Zach, a chapter for triathlon, ice climbing, and we just got back from my wife's family reunion. That whole trip is in that chapter, and we can go back and look at that chapter. And then we're working on adding people being able to co-author those chapters. So like at our family reunion, all 50 people that are there could have downloaded the app and been invited to that chapter, and we all could have written about that chapter. So that whole bucket of memories is saved for us there. But then they're also at locations, so you will be able to eventually open it up and see a map of what happened around you, but we're just slowly building it everywhere. So, and you know, one of the other big mistakes we made with Story is actually, come to think of it, every mistake I told you about, I think I made a Story. We just recovered from it faster. When we went to development of Story, we did see ourselves as bigger than we really were, and so we went to development for iPhone and Android. And it was like, we gotta have the Android side of things because we don't want to lose out on 50% of the market share, right? Horrible mistake. We should have just developed for the one platform, made it good, which is what we're doing now, right? We scrapped Android. Android's a mess to develop for. If you're looking at doing a mobile app, just start with iPhone and go from there. Even better, do responsive design, HTML5, CSS3, just to get your initial product launched off the ground. But we overbuilt. And one of the things I've learned as an entrepreneur, early on as an entrepreneur, I was so afraid to release a product that didn't have enough features for people, right? But as I've become a more experienced entrepreneur, my biggest fear has switched from that to overbuilding a product that no one wants. And so now I'd much rather release a product that just totally looks like crap, but I can start getting some feedback from, rather than to launch this big product only to find out, oh crap, nobody really wants this, right? And so that validation is just like super key. Spend 10 times as much validating as you think you really need to offset the fact that you're such a dreamer and you really think your company's going to be the next billion-dollar idea. Because automatically when you think of an idea, A, you want to imagine that no one else has thought of that idea before. Am I right? Right? And so that stops you from actually doing all the research, because you're partially afraid to go do the research to find out who your competitors are, because you don't actually want to find out that there's 3 other people who are totally kicking your ass at this thing, and that means you can't do it. You want to think, hey, nobody's done this before, let's get to work on it. But then you also automatically assume everybody wants this stuff, right? Only to find out after you spend the $10,000 and 6 months of your time, there's not going to be a single one for this, and you're totally discouraged. And so spend 10 times as much validating as we think you ought to. When we did Story, there's one of my successes for Story. We spent a lot of time. I built an entire prototype with an iPad app called App Cooker, where you can just build out these static prototypes. And people can click through them, but there's no database driving it. It's really, really bare bones. But we got into the hands of over like 150 people and just let them give us their feedback. This button's too small, this doesn't make sense. I really think it'd be cool if you had this. And so we went through 5 revisions of our product and our user interface to really get down to where we thought we had a product that people cared about and wanted. And it really, really changed from its very early stages to where we ended up.
So you said you've got about 10 or 15 guys using it now in alpha testing, and they're not really using it. So how are you getting the feedback from them, and how do you not become emotionally involved in the fact that they're not giving you feedback, I guess, the way that you were hoping?
I'm not emotionally involved because I think it sucks too. So I don't expect them to think it's cool. But so the way that we get the feedback right now is just, since it's so small, we just talk to them. And so we'll just ask them, hey, what are you thinking about the app? Why aren't you using it? I'll tell you this, my wife doesn't use my app, right? And half of me wants to say to my wife, I'm your husband! I've worked so hard on this thing! Use it! Right? But I won't do that. And the reason is, I want to sit back and I want to wait to see the one thing that turns the switch for my wife to where she wants to start using it. Because I don't want her using it out of guilt that she's married to me, I want her using it because it's the coolest thing ever and it's so awesome. And I know why she's not using it. It's just not feature rich enough to make sense for her to use right now. And so we have to keep building out those features. But I'm not emotionally invested because I want her to want it, not to be forced into using it. Because you'll never force a consumer into using it. You got to make them want it. Any other questions?
Comment, I think, particularly in the entrepreneurial community where you're bringing together a lot of individuals. I've had a few companies with partners, and validation comes at the product point, and I think it's even more important these relationships that we're forming. And as you mentioned in the one with Story, we meet these bright, energetic people, but yet we don't validate what it's going to take to, move our company or whatever it is forward with that. And so it's just as important, I think, to vet out and as we form our groups of this, because we're all excited in the beginning. We all, and when an idea is there, obviously, if you only got 4 hours a week and you see a great idea, I want to be a part of this. But I think that slows down the process and it muddles the process when there isn't that vested, invest your time into that fully, into that project. And so, sometimes we miss what the validation should be. We get high on these relationships. We want people to support. We're either giving people going, you're the greatest, or, and they back away. But I think this, being in a business for 38 years, the people we surround ourselves with, and the way we use those tools, those people, is equally as important as with the product. Can get us steered or slow us, or and that's why it's so exciting with this group. That it's something that needs to be fleshed out more. How we put these relationships together, how we use them, and how we vet the people within the group, and push a little harder to say, we're afraid of people dropping out, or we really like to have this guy in the group, and so we go 6 months trying to hang on with that for the 1 email a week, and then we get better, and things pretty much are what they are, and don't change.
Yeah, I definitely think it's important to understand that quickly. That if the team's bad, you need to recognize that as soon as absolutely possible and make adjustments.
Yeah, do it properly fast. And that's part of the thing about a great entrepreneur is like you just gotta have the guts to just do it. Which reminds me of one of my big Austin players. But early on as an entrepreneur, you automatically have this idea that you can't let anyone else know your idea, because you have to protect it, and not tell anyone about it. There's all this secrecy, and because in your mind, everybody else in the world has got their ear out for good ideas they hear on the street, and they run home and then they rip them off, and then they make $1 million, right? And so early on, I didn't tell anybody about my ideas, right? Like everybody had to sign NDAs, which is such a pain in the butt, and it's basically saying like, I don't trust you, which is never a good way to start business. But one of the things that somebody told me was, they said, you got lots of ideas, right? I said, I got lots of ideas. And they said, take your number 2 or 3 idea, go tell it to everybody. See if you can get somebody to rip it off. Nobody ripped it off. Nobody's in the business of ripping things off. The only time things get ripped off is after they become wildly successful, and then everybody already knows about you, right? So you've already gotten rich. But your best friend, probably, with your idea is letting everybody know about it. And you've got to get their feedback. And then the other real important thing there too is find people in the space in which you're working in, which is sort of counterintuitive, because you think like, I don't want to talk to them. They'll steal my idea. No, they won't. Even if they do, that's a big compliment to you, right? It feels you had a really great idea, but they're really not going to do it. Facebook is not interested in ripping off me, right? Facebook's busy running a multi-billion-dollar company, and they don't want to rip me off, right? But go and find everybody you can in that space, or who has exited from that space, and talk to them. Eric did that with his gear mount company. I think the first time we talked, I've got a couple guys that I know that are in that space, and Eric's like, dude, connect me with them. And so he connected with them, and got feedback from people who really mattered within that space, because they've spent years in the space. They can give you a pretty good idea of whether or not your idea may have any legs to stand on. But just don't be afraid to throw your ideas out there. So A, nobody's going to steal them. B, if they do, it's really kind of a compliment to you. You've got such a great idea, and you can pick it up.
Dan, you said earlier, face your problems, deal with the problems like real early on. I think one of the other issues that we have as entrepreneurs is we're worried about sharing the idea or whatever. Just not sharing at all, we miss the opportunity to let advice and the other entrepreneurs in our local community provide us that support network that we need. Because 9 times out of 10, you don't realize that you have a problem when you actually do. So if you're out there, communicating with the community, sharing what you're going through, they're more apt to highlight a problem to you than you may not actually realize that you already have. And that can go as much as with your product as it can with the personnel that are on your team. And so I think that's an underlying thing. It has nothing to do with really business at all. It has everything to do with the community in which your startup is living in. But dealing with problems fast and getting to lean on other entrepreneurs can really, really help you not just solve the problems, but realize that they exist, so you can deal with them before they turn into the giant gorilla in the room.
Yeah, and we've got to be willing to accept honest feedback and give honest feedback. You know, because there's such a desire, like if Ian comes to me with this greatest idea that he's been working on for the last month and he's just so psyched about it, I'm really feeling like, dude, that idea sucks, right? But
You put
does it,
in yogurt.
is it helpful?
That's the dumbest idea ever.
Is it helpful for Ian for me to say like, yeah, cool man, like hope that goes well for you? Or is it more helpful for me to say, Ian, I really don't think it's gonna work, I think it's a horrible idea. Go talk to some other people about it, right? Like, I'm gonna kinda let him down a little bit, but in the end, I'm really helping him all the time. And so you gotta be able to find people that can give you super honest feedback about your idea. And it doesn't mean that you don't keep doing it, right? I mean, the more people you talk to, by and large, most of the people we've talked to about Story love it. People are within the space and, you know, they think you guys have something there. But we've hit guys, you know, investors that just look at us and say, that's stupid, why would anybody want to do that, right? And it doesn't mean we stop going, but we get enough feedback to where we can start making decisions. And I think you also need, if you have partners, you need partners that can be brutally honest with you. Like, that's such a relationship thing there, you know, to where, like, Justin and I are just super honest with each other. Like, I'm a big idea guy, so I kick out like 5 ideas a day. And, you know, 4.8 of them, Justin tells me I'm stupid and I suck the idea, and then I realize the next day, yeah, I was a second idea. But we take that from each other, right? Like, we shoot out ideas, and he fully has the ability to just say, no, it's not happening. And I have the same ability to give back to him. None of us are hurt, you know, emotionally. It's business, right? And it helps the company.
How do you deal with the financing of a startup? Banks, loans, partners? You run out of money before you run out of time.
I'm probably not the best person to ask that question. Mine have all been personally financed. We've got one small investor for Story, but I've never actually, you know, gone the capital raising route. I don't know, Eric, have you raised capital there?
Yeah, so I've not only raised capital, but I'm also an angel investor in a lot of different tech startups. It used to be that 10 years ago, you had to spend a bunch of money to write C++ code and all this stuff. I mean, you were in $30, $40, $50,000 to even see if you could get traction. So people would invest in those companies early on. Now, if you can't go to Odesk and just spend $1,000 to get a proof of concept and actually get people to buy into it and get traction, there's not an investor that's going to look at you. I won't even entertain a concept unless somebody can come to me like Dan did and say, look, we've got a mobile app, it actually works, put it on your phone. If you can actually develop something with traction, and you can do that so cheaply and so easily. I mean, these days, you can do it for $1,500, $2,000. You can get a proof of concept out there. And, you know, if you can't raise that between family and friends and things like that, maybe now's not the right time to do a startup, because that's not that much money.
And I think there's also there's this real sex appeal in entrepreneurs to raise capital. Like, somehow along the way, we got bought into this idea that raising capital is like the pinnacle of being an entrepreneur. No, running a successful company is the pinnacle of being an entrepreneur. And so we made that same mistake with Story, right? And everybody pushes you like, oh, it's an awesome idea. Like, you got this cool prototype, blah, blah, blah. Go raise money. And we were so not ready to raise money. Like, we, you know, our first, you know, just a friend of mine, you know, threw in some money. And that was great. Like, it helped us, you know, build a prototype and stuff like that. And he got rewarded handsomely for, you know, taking such a big risk early on. But we don't need money right now. We're not looking for money right now. We don't want money right now. Until we get into public beta, we're not even going to start thinking about money. Because it takes so much time to raise capital, so much time to raise capital. It's crazy. And so you can either focus on building your product, a beautiful product, or you can focus on raising money. But unless you have a really big team, you can't do both. And so spend all your time and energy into building a really great product. But great products will bring the financing or they'll bring the revenue, one of the two. But ideas are a dime a dozen.
So, on the valuation topic, I've worked for a couple startups and it just didn't do too well. And the problem there seems to be that
they would talk to their friends, and their friends would say, the idea is great, this is amazing, but they were not the target market, and they were never going to be the target market. And even if they were in the target market, when there was a prototype, they didn't end up using it. How do you rate the value of someone who has absolutely no idea what they're talking about, saying, oh, that's a really cool idea, versus someone who might know what they're talking about, saying that's a really cool idea, versus someone using or not using your prototype and giving feedback on it?
Yeah, I mean, essentially you have kind of like, in my mind, three groups of people, right? You've got like the general public, you've got your target audience, and then you've got people knowledgeable in the space, right? And really the general public doesn't really matter much, you know? So you definitely have to weed through who those people are. I think validation is a skill in and of itself. I mean, it's just its own valuable skill to have, and it's something that you learn and you get better at. In our case, for Story, initially launching this thing, we thought that our target audience was 18 to 24 age group. And so, because that's the age group that is most likely to use Foursquare notification-based services and stuff like that. And so, as we kicked out the idea to them, they all loved it, right? But then we ran all these tests on Facebook, doing this Facebook marketing and all this multivariate testing. And so we've run all these different campaigns targeted at different age groups with different interests. And it pushed them all over to our site to try to get them to like our page to be one of the first users for Story. And we ended up getting like over 1,000 likes through that. But through all that data, what we actually found out was that wasn't our target audience. Our target audience was actually the 25 to 34 and the 35 to 44 age group.
Because they're old enough to actually have chapters.
That's it. That's it. And you're 18 to 24.
One chapter.
You're not thinking.
Drink.
Yeah.
Okay, done with the book.
You're invincible. You're not thinking about leaving behind memories or legacies or anything, right? But when you get married, when you start having kids, when you start getting a real job, when you start living life, you start realizing how fast life is going by and how many memories you've forgotten. And so our marketing changed for that, right? So we kind of made some of that mistake too, but then we did enough testing to really get back and validate it. I think oftentimes, like you're saying, a lot of people go out and like, all right, I need to validate. Ian, do you think I'm awesome? Yeah. Nick, do you think I'm awesome? Do you think my idea is awesome? Yeah. Good to go, you know? And then like you just blindly go, whoa. But validation isn't just something that happens at the very early stages of your idea. You know, like there's the early validation, and then you build the product, and then there's that product validation, and then you're going to take it to market, and then there's market validation, right? So you're validating at different stages along the way. So we're right now in the product validation of Story. We're still figuring out what's the product exactly going to look like, how are people interacting with it, we're getting their feedback, and then we're actually, once we get that set, we're going to take it to the market, and then we have to do our market validation. So it's just an ongoing process.
I think something else to look for as a lot of new entrepreneurs, people wanting to move from industry into something on their own, because being small business owner for 38 years, I always look at everything has to have a return on investment. As you get into business, my time becomes more limited. And so whatever venture I get into, personal or business, I always look at it, it's got a return on investment. And one way to look at it is the Startup Colorado Springs that we participated in a startup weekend, is that the product we developed and we're still meeting as a group may or may not go anywhere, but I'm investing my time and energy into it because of the connections. Working with UCCS in terms of some prototyping, maybe working with a class to develop the product. Those relationships are a huge return on investment. It's worth my time. My time here via Startup Colorado Springs, in terms of those relationships, those looking to get into a business, if you can get on a team with somebody and get the experience and say, let me help out through this process, watch through that. But I think that we can't just be looking for that idea and what money it's going to make. Some businesses, some products have that potential to carry you there, make the money, become a business. But I think that probably a good percentage of my pursuits aren't just, I'm doing this and it's a monetary return. My core business, I expect a monetary return. I put a lot of demand on that. Other things I'm looking for are return on investment, whether it's through exercise, whether it's through developing relationships, whether it's learning a new skill. And, I didn't go to college, I didn't have to pay for college. I've got real world business experience in mentoring and working with people, people mentor me. I think that that's the core of what I see as this startup Colorado Springs is you just got to get out there a little bit more, get involved in something, but identify what that return on investment is. I'm getting a relationship, I'm learning more about how a business starts, I'm working with the university, but there's a lot more than I've got this business, we're going to develop it, and we're going to make $1 million on it. And I think even as you've been in a lot of successful businesses, you get involved in things that the return on investment is different than just a monetary return. And I think that's the strength of what this group can be, and as we network in smarter ways, our return on investment and our really what is it to be, it's changed. I started in 1975, and I consider myself an entrepreneur, but it was a business owner. A lot of the things that we see in today's community is there's lots of ideas and we're going to flip it in 3 years and make money. My entrepreneurship was always, I'm looking for a business to start and run and provide a living for. So there's different ways of going about this, getting something to flip. When I started a print shop, there's all kinds of different levels, and you have to decide, do I want starting a business to develop and grow? Am I getting something to flip? What is my return on investment to these people? What is a better way to go? A lot of great strengths to it. The startup concept community, the startup weekend, the way it was presented was extremely valuable and a great return on investment. For me, it has been in business for 38 years to reinforce some of those things early along, those early steps we want to skip. Well, my ideas are great. I don't need to validate them. I've been in business a long time. I'm so smart. I finally realized this is the very best idea. But to step back with you people saying, you've got to start here before you can take the next step. I think this is amazing.
Yeah, so we're gonna have to cut off now. It's 9 o'clock, so the meter just started, so we don't want anyone to get it.
However, you're exactly right. So meet someone new that you haven't seen before at Open Coffee Club. Share an experience or two that you've had at another event at Startup Colorado Springs or PVG like Click on. And if you guys have any other questions, please come talk to Nick or I. And see you guys next month.